We all know someone who jokes about having a terrible sense of direction. They take a wrong turn, laugh it off, and eventually figure it out. But imagine stepping out of your front door, walking a block you've walked 1,000 times, and suddenly the crowd blurs, the street spins, and you have absolutely no idea where you are. This is the daily reality for people living with developmental topographical disorientation, or DTD. It is a lifelong neurological condition where a person is entirely unable to orient themselves in space. And the strangest part? They have zero brain damage and perfectly healthy general cognitive function. Researchers estimate that up to 3% of the population meets the criteria for DTD. That translates to millions of individuals hiding in plain sight, quietly struggling to navigate their own neighborhoods. Patients often describe their experience as a kind of floating nothingness. If they lose visual track of a friend in a store or set down their keys, they instantly lose all conceptual understanding of where that object is relative to their own body. They can't just retrace steps in their mind because that mental space simply does not exist. Because memory and intelligence remain intact, friends and family often don't believe them. DTD patients face a lifetime of being told they are exaggerating, not trying hard enough, or using their confusion as an excuse to avoid running errands. Years of chronic social invalidation create a deep vacuum of support, often leading to secondary trauma and severe anxiety. To actually help people living with DTD, we have to look past their behavior and examine the physical wiring of the brain itself. When a typical person navigates a city, their brain relies on a highly synchronized network. The heavy lifting is done by a trio of structures: the hippocampus, the parahippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. Working together, these regions constantly generate a cognitive map. This is an allocentric, or survey-level representation of the environment. It allows you to picture the layout of a city from above and intuitively know which direction home is, even if you can't see it. In a brain with DTD, basic visual perception works perfectly. You can recognize a building or a street sign, but the long-range connectivity linking the hippocampus to the rest of the spatial network is severely reduced. Without those signals communicating, the brain's internal 3D map collapses completely. Scans reveal specific structural differences driving this disconnect. In individuals affected by DTD, the hippocampus is positioned further toward the midline of the brain, and it has noticeably larger fissure volumes compared to healthy individuals. The structural shift in the hippocampus provides a physical explanation for the navigational failure, marking DTD as a distinct architectural divergence in the human connectome. Without an internal map, people with DTD have to compensate. They navigate by memorizing strict step-by-step instructions tied entirely to visual landmarks. Go straight until you see the red house, then turn left toward the park. This coping mechanism is incredibly fragile. If the city cuts down a tree or a neighbor paints that red house blue, the route is destroyed. The landmark disappears, the directions fail, and the person is immediately stranded. This chart shows the adjusted odds ratios from a study comparing different navigation strategies among Italian adults. It helps clinicians separate healthy spatial orientation from actual DTD-level disorientation. As you can see at the bottom, a high survey score, meaning the ability to use a mental map, is strongly predictive of successful navigation. Meanwhile, heavy reliance on landmark or route strategies correlates closely with spatial deficits. People with DTD are effectively forced to navigate a complex, three-dimensional world using a highly delicate, one-dimensional instruction manual. These connectivity challenges rarely exist in isolation. DTD shares network-level commonalities with several other neurodevelopmental conditions, frequently overlapping with ADHD, dyscalculia, and severe working memory deficits. Historically, clinicians relied on the core deficit hypothesis, as seen here in box B. This model attempted to explain complex conditions through a single, isolated mechanistic impairment, essentially trying to find the one broken part of the brain to fix. When treatment focuses solely on correcting a single deficit, clinicians often prioritize fixing behaviors through rigid interventions. Forcing an individual to suppress their natural coping mechanisms to meet neurotypical standards leads to compliance trauma, a state where the child internalizes the message that their natural way of experiencing the world is fundamentally wrong. Modern treatment relies on a neuro-affirming approach. Instead of trying to force a missing cognitive map to grow, specialists focus on validating the individual's unique sensory profile and working with the brain they actually have. This means implementing practical, language-based compensatory strategies. Doctors recommend using pre-planned written directions and relying on GPS devices with turn-by-turn voice guidance, allowing the patient to bypass their spatial deficit entirely. When society replaces dismissive jokes with genuine curiosity and targeted tools, individuals with DTD are no longer trapped in a floating nothingness. They are finally equipped to confidently chart their own course.